but there's so many tremendous accomplishments that I didn't feel I could cut any of it out. So just bear with me, Dr. Cernick. So Dr. Cernick goes by the pronouns they, them, their, and is a white settler currently living on Dish with One Spoon Treaty Territory. Rick is a senior instructor in the Addiction Studies program at Wilfrid Laurier University, professor emeritus in the School of Social Work at King's University College at Western University, and was a co-developer of the McMaster University Addiction Studies program. Their academic background includes a Bachelor of Science, a Bachelor of Social Work from McMaster University, a Master's of Social Work, and a PhD in Social Work from the University of Toronto, and a graduate diploma in school administration from Wilfrid Laurier University. Dr. Cernick's scholarly contributions are extensive and deeply influential. They have authored 14 books and edited 10 others, including The Essential Guide to Psychoactive Drugs in Canada, Homeless, Housing and Mental Health, The Drug Paradox, Substance Use and Misuse, Everything Matters, and Responding to the Oppression of Addiction. Over the course of their career, Dr. Cernick has contributed to more than 250 peer-reviewed publications, delivered over 300 public presentations, and has participated in research teams that have received more than $5.5 million in funding. A social worker for 4 decades, Dr. Cernick has been widely recognized for excellence in teaching, research, and leadership. Their awards include King's University College Teacher of the Year, McMaster University Continuing Education Teacher of the Year, the Hugh Mellon Excellence in Research Award, the Ontario Volunteer Award, and the Jeff Wilby Award for Leadership in the Field of Addiction. Dr. Cernick brings to their work a critical, compassionate, and deeply thoughtful lens that challenges stigma, centers social justice, and reminds us that substance use, mental health, and systems of care are inseparable from broader social and structural realities. We are honored to learn from Dr. Cernick today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cernick today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Vicki. The problem with an introduction like that is now everyone expects me to actually do something. So I will do my best. The other problem you've done is you've actually given me 9 extra minutes I'm not used to, and I will fill those 9 minutes absolutely. So let me see if all my pandemic skills have come to fruition, and they have. You will see my email address at the very bottom. It should be in small caps, not large caps. I'll say this at the very beginning. I more than welcome your questions tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, 4 months from now. If there's something that can help you with your practice and your mediation, something that you want to discuss after the fact, by all means. I am now Professor Emeritus, which means I'm only working part-time and I have lots of needs to fill my ego. So by all means, send me a question. And if I don't know the answer, I'm more than likely to know someone that does and is much smarter than I am. Thanks again to Vicki for that lovely orientation. What it means, I've spent 4 decades trying to learn something. I have no idea what your academic backgrounds are. I know they're quite varied. I have lots of degrees. I spent way too much time in university. And during those 12 years, I didn't receive 1 class in this topic. So I have a science background, I have a social work background, I have a minor in psychology, and no one in my career, I'm a late boomer, talked about this. And yet, as all of you well know, this is a core element of not just our practice, but our society. So you're going to get a biased view of someone who's practiced here for 4 decades from a social work science background. And hopefully some of the ideas will affirm your practice and some will challenge them. This was already done nicely, so thank you so much for doing this. A few words, how you conceptualize the idea of addiction. And some of those words came through in the thought, in the mind cloud. And so this is an emotionally charged term. It is used incorrectly, primarily in society, is used to grab attention. And like all words, is based in our cultural meaning and in our fears. Now, here's something you didn't expect. Just for a moment, think about your favorite movie or three. Just quickly, just quickly. What do you like to watch? What do you spend your spare time doing? During the pandemic, I watched a lot of movies from the 1950s. Really interesting, a lot of British movies as well, too. And it got me thinking about this question. So what are your favorite movies, concurrent, historic, whatever they are? And I ask you that because of this context, the lens through which I view addiction. My personal friend Aldous Huxley, that humanity at large will ever be able to dispense with artificial paradises seems very unlikely. Most men and women lead lives at worst so painful, and you see much of this in your practice, at best so monotonous, poor, and limited that the urge to escape, the longing to transcend themselves, if only for a few moments, is and always has been one of the principal appetites of the soul. So, from my perspective, and for the next hour and 5 minutes, the notion of human culture is drug culture. Our origins, prehistoric origins, are so tied up with drugs that we can't separate them from our literature, our art, our music, our lives, our personal problems. So, my favorite movies. Casablanca, obviously the coolest anti-hero of his generation, was named Rick, well, better name to give someone. If you think about Casablanca, and if you've not seen it, please see it. It is a classic movie. The only spoiler I'll give you is that it's set in a bar. Every scene has Rick with either an alcoholic beverage or a cigarette. So the coolest anti-hero of his time, the entire context of his being and his coolness is tied up with alcohol and tobacco. I also like It's a Wonderful Life. I use the teaching tool about hopefulness for my students. It is ultimately a story about hope and the significance how every person is critical in the shaping the future of all the lives they touch. Now, if you've seen the movie, and I watch it every Christmas with my partner, we sit and we watch it, some of the critical scenes, some of the scenes that transcend from the afterlife to the real world and back and forth are set in a bar. And again, I don't want to spoil the movie. If you've not seen it, it's a classic, but Martini's Bar is the last step before entering and slipping into nothingness and then returning to the real world. So the bar is a critical spot. A bar is a place of socialization. A bar goes from a place of joy to a place of anger and back to joy as George Bailey transfers himself from nothingness to reality. And of course, because I am a late boomer, The Matrix, another story about hope and individuality. The White Rabbit LSD reference for the middle boomers. And of course, do you take the red pill or the blue pill? Do you live in reality or not live in reality? And certainly one of the transcendences of psychoactive drugs, which lead to addiction, is the notion of what reality do you want to live in? So again, think about your favorite movie. Think about, is there a alcohol, drug, tobacco reference? If you are, unfortunately, like I am a Netflix subscriber, now at the top of the Netflix movies, they now warn you about violence and sex, alcohol, and smoking. So again, very, very interesting the way that that cultural context has changed. So in terms of setting the stage, right, I told you that no one ever taught me about drugs. So where did I learn from drugs? I learned in the real world. My first job was in the field was with the Addiction Research Foundation of Ontario, which is now the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And they gave me a wonderful grounding that I built upon because there were no social courses back in the 1980s on addiction. That's why I helped build this frame. So in no way am I a brilliant, insightful person, despite Vicky's lovely words. It's that there was nothingness. And so in nothingness, I've built this belief system that I want to share with you today. And again, hopefully confirms and challenges at the same point in time. So in the field of addiction, 3 key constructs: psychoactive drug, dependency, and the magic word addiction. I'm a social worker, the background in science and psychology, and I'm a heretic, right? I'm a purist in this field. And you'll discern that in the next 15, 20 minutes what I mean by being a purist. And again, what's your conceptualization of addiction? And does my purist thinking align with or disrupt what you think and how you practice because of how you think. So number one, psychoactive drug. This is a type of drug that distinguishes itself, and I'll talk about the family categories just to help you align with you're thinking about them if you're not familiar with psychoactive drug categories. It changes the brain. Now, most people, again, no offense to you because you're not most people, view this as changing behavior. Really, really important. It does change behavior, which is why you end up in mediation issues often because of a parent using a psychoactive drug. What is also critical to understand, though, is that it impacts not just the central nervous system, but the autonomic nervous system. I was thinking about my nails. I was trimming my nails before coming to the presentation. And I was thinking, you probably trim your nails too. How often do you think about how your nails grow? Honestly, you ever think about it? The last time you cut yourself, not a cut for stitches, but just a normal cut, right? You cut yourself, maybe put a little polysporin in. I am sponsored by polysporin people. Put a Band-Aid on it, another product placement. And then 3 or 4 days later, it's healed. And you have done nothing consciously to heal yourself. So right now, this morning, you had hopefully some breakfast, maybe some coffee, another psychoactive drug to keep you going. And all that goes into your system. But your biological processes, breathing, and often we teach our service users, our clients to breathe, but breathing is natural. You don't have to think about it. Good breathing, we have to think about. Every one of those biological systems that keeps you alive, your hair growing, your nails growing, your skin healing, and I'll talk about that during my sleep presentation this afternoon. It is a commercial placement, are also affected by psychoactive drugs. So it's both the unconscious and conscious processes that distinguishes a psychoactive drug as important in understanding the larger construction of addiction. So you'll see in my diagram here, all parts of the brain are impacted. The sympathetic nervous system is impacted, and every biological system that you need to live is impacted distinctly by different families of psychoactive drugs. Dependency. 2 constructs. Physical dependency is quite easy to spot. This is that notion when your body has become used to having a drug in the system. The term is tolerance. When you're used to having the drug and the drug is not there, you are physically unwell. Withdrawal. If someone is dependent upon alcohol and they don't have adequate alcohol, they will go into anything from sweats to tremors. They will be more aggressive. They will be more withdrawn. They will have an aberration from their normal baseline. Different families of drugs tend to develop similar patterns of withdrawal. So this is why we classify them as depressants, opioid stimulants, hallucinogens, and I'll talk about that momentarily. And that's really important, right? Because it makes you physically ill. That's what we test for in drug testing. It's what we look for in terms of, drug testing. Yeah. No, it doesn't tell you physical dependency. All it does is tell you use. May or may not be useful. That's all it tells you. The psychological piece is a little more subtle. Much more important because it's more subtle. So today is Wednesday. I'm doing a presentation. I'm going to do my best to sing and dance and keep you entertained, informed, and educated. I get feedback from Vicky and goes, Rick, you know what? Thanks so much, but you suck. And I go, well, thanks. Appreciate that. I always like honest feedback. And so at dinner time, I have a glass of wine and I feel better about not doing real well today. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a seminar for students, and I go and, again, not doing particularly well. You know what? I'm Professor Emeritus. I don't teach all the time now. I'm on a pension. I don't care as much. But again, I have another glass of wine, and I feel better about it. Friday, I'm supposed to hear from my kids, but my kid's in school and he's busy, hasn't got time to call me. But again, at dinner time, I have my single glass of wine, and man, I feel better. Saturday's good. No problem Saturday. So I have 2 glasses of wine. That's lovely. At no point in time am I intoxicated. I'm going to talk about your level of intoxication and the difference between men and women, and why women, you've probably been over-medicated most of your life based upon the way we prescribe medication, let alone take psychoactive drugs. And Sunday, it's Super Bowl Sunday. I'm going to my sister-in-law's. I got to take lots of wine. It's cold where I live. I'm not sure it's cold where you live. And my car doesn't start. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I can't get a boost. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Everyone is out and I can't get to my sister-in-law's. And because of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I've drank all my wine. Now, I'm not going into physical withdrawal. I'm not shaking. I'm not sweating. I don't have memory loss. I'm a little upset because all I'm doing is thinking about the fact that I can't get to Super Bowl Sunday party, which means I can't have any wine today. And so the psychological dependency part, obviously interconnected with physical, but it is that thinking, that continual worrying in your brain about getting the drug, having the drug present, knowing you can access the drug, where all your central organizing principle of your life gets around the drug. It's not around your job, not around your kids, not around taking care of others, not even about self-care, but it's about making sure you have access to the drug. And so two distinct elements, physical need and psychological craving, desire to have that substance. Much more compelling, right? So psychological drives our behavior. Our physical underlies our essence in our life, right? The nail growing, the healing of cuts. So the two intersect. But that's not addiction, right? Again, some of you who are younger, well, this will be history. Some of you who are my age, this will be what you lived in. There's this little thing called the Vietnam War, right? I mean, we're all aware of what's going on in the United States now. We're all aware of what's going on in Iran, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on, sadly, in Gaza and Myanmar, right? So war is not a new construct to our society. But the Vietnam War was, what, psychodrama between the Americans and the Russians, the allies and the enemy, or as Prime Minister Carney has said, a different construction of reality. Anyway, so there's this conflict going on in Vietnam, and they are taking 18-year-olds who don't qualify for deferment, who have not gone on to post-secondary institution, from Rhode Island, from New Mexico, from Montana, from North Dakota. They're taking 18-year-olds, right? Often young men, no women at this point in time, who are decent athletes or good athletes, and they're plunking them down for 6 weeks, 8 weeks of basic training. Then they're taking them off to a place called Vietnam. And there's a simulation of Vietnam in the Infantry Museum, which is just outside LaGrange, Georgia. So I walked in there, and it is misty, and it's dark, and it's humid, and little white lights flash at you, which is someone trying to blow your head off. And I know it's a simulation, but my whole nervous system, boom, activated. So I can't imagine being 18-year-old, 19 years old, without full brain development, 6 to 8 weeks of training, dropped in a rainforest, watching my friends die around me. Right? We would call this, not surprisingly, a high-stress environment. I love being an academic because every now and then we go from just making stuff up in belief systems to actually being fact-based and knowledgeable. The United States government knew by the late 1960s, and it's all been documented, reported now, all the data's come out, everything's being released, they knew they were losing the war. And they're losing the war for a couple of reasons. One, they're improper training. Two, you've got 18, 19-year-olds who are watching their friends die. And three, there's lots of access to drugs everywhere in Vietnam. And good drugs, cannabis and heroin and opioid. What happened was, as you'll see, there was, when you finish your tour of duty, right, your year inland, you're an infantry soldier, not officer, but just a soldier, a grunt. You would be taken either to the east coast of Vietnam, or you'd be taken to Japan to debrief before returning to the United States. You'd be transitioned. There's actually a TV show called China Beach for a while on that demonstrated some of this place of restoration. And so they had 900 individuals, troops randomly selected. You'll see 898, two of them died during the transition, so 898, and half of them tested positive for opioids. So you've got a random sample of approximately 900 young men who are inland fighting, trying to keep South Vietnam free of the communists, and just over half of them have opioids in their system. Really, really hard to fight and focus when you are impaired on opioids. And we've heard about fentanyl and all those issues as well too. The fascinating part though was in that transition period from inland to China Beach or Japan, to then transition to the United States, where they would end up in a Veterans Affairs hospital, a VA hospital. Only 1% rated being addicted on the addiction scale. So you get 900, half of which test, so there's got 450. And of them, like 5 by the time they've transitioned. And why is that? Well, you know exactly why that is, don't you? Once you remove the societal factors, once you remove the fact that every day you may die, and take that high stress away from you, you don't need the drug. Now, interestingly, within 3 years, 10% of individuals were back to using drugs. And that again talks about adjustment issues, talks about PTSD, talks about the whole return to a different environment and the adjustment that occurs. So this is the final element, and this is the element you see in your practice. This is the social element of addiction, what we don't talk about, because we want to blame the individual for their drug use as opposed to looking at the broader context. So again, in my heretic view, right, I view addiction as a biopsychosocial phenomenon. And for us to treat, in my world, or for you to appreciate in doing your assessments and determining outcomes for families and children and communities, is that the biopsychosocial are all factors that need to come into it. I have a brief slide about treatment systems, and despite the wonderful work my colleagues do, most addiction treatment systems are not set up to do this. They're done in bits and pieces. You can do it over time, but certainly there are very few resources that, boom, do this simultaneously. Not set up, not too complex, and quite honestly, not trained or educated to do that. If you're a doctor, you're in the biology. If you're a social worker, you're in social, maybe the psycho, some of it. Psychologist, obviously psychological, a little bit of social, but addiction, right? I'm going to guess none of you have a degree in addiction. I sure as hell don't. So complicated construct. You need to look at 3 dimensions in doing a full-blown assessment. So that's the opening basis for my viewpoint and where I work from. And so this is why I'm a heretic, right? What can you be addicted to? And so again, if we're in a small group, I'd ask you and you tell me, more than likely, if you're the typical group, I know you're above average, so you tell me even more. You tell me gambling's addiction, shopping, working, pornography, sex, food, internet, exercise. You tell me all these things, and I go, great, you're absolutely wrong. This is what you can be addicted to. Psychoactive drugs, but not all psychoactive drugs. And why is that? Biopsychosocial. We'll talk about sex and food in a second. These, right? This one. These gambling, gaming, shopping, working, they're all psychosocial issues. They are compulsions. There is no biological drive. There's that psychological drive, that need to have the wine on Super Bowl Sunday, even though your car is broken down. Right? That is there. But there is no biological foundation driving it. There is no withdrawal from gambling, no physical withdrawal from gambling. And psychological withdrawal is a reality too. I mean, you just get anxious, you get aggressive, you get withdrawn, all these things that happen, but they're not biologically based. Why does that matter? These, well, not really cannabis unless you're driving too much and smoking too much, these can all physically harm you to the point of death. And I'll give you that slide momentarily. Gambling, gaming, shopping, not minimizing the fact that they can be devastating to a family system, devastating to a community, devastating to an individual and their children, but they are distinct in terms of how you treat them and how you respond to them. I mean, working in the addiction field, the drug field, it's easy. I always know where to start. I start with the drug, right? And then I look at the underlying reasons for the drug use. Here, I mean, put the drug aside. We've got all sorts of resources to put the drugs aside, all sorts of detox resources, all sorts of treatment resources, put the drug aside. But gambling, please, how do I put gambling aside in Canadian society in 2026? Obviously, I can't watch any sporting event because they're all sponsored by gambling organizations. I can't go to one because the advertisements all over the ice, the football field or the baseball stands. Right? I can't go to a gas station if I don't have an electric car because I walk in to pay my bill and there's a lot of options there. I can't go to Metro or Sobeys or wherever you grocery shop because you walk by the lottery kiosk as you go into it with the win $50 million. I can't watch, never mind, live the dream. If you have a shopping addiction, how do you live? You got to go to the store eventually to buy something, at least some socks, right? And my goodness, we're all working. I'm retired, I'm still working, right? Okay, Rick, sex and food. And Rick says, basic human drives. The difference is you don't need any of these. Sex is a primary drive of the human species, as is the need to eat. So if the first step in the treatment, if you have an addiction, a biopsychosocial phenomenon, if the first step is not harm reduction, but rather abstinence, which is a good step and a prominent step and one we still support and we treat, how do you abstain from sex and food? Now, I taught at Catholic University for 28 years. How do you abstain from sex? I'm not even going to go there. It's a basic human drive, regardless of what any religious or faith groups says. It is a basic human drive, as is the need to eat. So these are essential. These are not. And that's a distinguishing factor. This you can go without. These, in essence, you cannot. Why do people use drugs, right? But more importantly, is why don't people use drugs? Right? Going back to Huxley, thinking of the people you serve, your clients, your service users, given the situation and circumstances they lived in, they've grown up in, is it not amazing? More people don't, not everyone's got $8,000 to go to Cuba. We can't go to Cuba anymore anyway. Americans shut it off. So $8,000 to go to Mexico. Mexico is not that safe these days of cartels. Turks and Caicos. Turks and Caicos is dangerous now because of the importing of drugs on the shores. Anyway, not everyone has $8,000. $5,000. You can go to Cuba for $4,000, but you can't go to Cuba anymore. Go on holidays. But you can go down to the LCB. My mom's a senior. My mom's 88 years old. My mom, if you're from Hamilton, lives on the corner of Upper Gage and Mohawk. From her 6th floor apartment, she can see a bar, the beer store, the LCBO, Tim Hortons, obviously, and a cannabis store, right? So on her senior's pension, with her limited OAS money, she can wander by and have a beer or a vodka or a joint, or whatever she buys from the bar she goes to, they sell at 3 o'clock in the morning. The accessibility of psychoactive drugs, right, to deal with the issues of physical or emotional or social pain is readily accessible. So why don't people use drugs? Especially going back to asking about your movies, is that from the time you're a child, you are ingrained with the fact that drugs are a way to socialize, to have fun, to solve problems, to go out and be with friends with. It's culturally acceptable. This has been our response. So going to a macro level, this has been our response, is that we try and do prevention. Again, think about the prevention programming that you had when you were in school. My colleague, Tara Bruin, and I did a study on the prevention programming in Ontario, and we found out that just over half the schools actually have a regular prevention programming, and of those 54% of schools that do regular prevention programming, less than a quarter of them actually do something that has been empirically demonstrated to actually have an impact on children. So if you've grown up with the DARE program, it's crap. No offense, DARE 2, not much better. People who go through the DARE program actually use more drugs than kids who have no prevention programming. Isn't that lovely? So prevention's there. We still don't know quite how, well, we know how to do it. It's just difficult integrating the systems. With enforcement, we are very, 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 very good at putting people in jail for drugs. We stopped doing it for the most part for cannabis. The best example I have of the utility of enforcement is countries like Iran and China, where they still have capital punishment for drug dealers. And I mean, not the low levels, but the higher ones, the ones, not high, but mid-level ones, right? They still have capital punishment, and they have capital punishment every year. And it's around the same number, somewhere between 50 and 150 people. It's not a whole lot given how many people live in those two countries, but every year they kill about 50, 150 people for being drug dealers every year. So they keep killing people, and they have to keep killing more people. So no matter how many people they kill, there's more people to sell drugs. It's lucrative. If you remember the economic crisis we had at the beginning of this century, right? The one back early noughts. Without going in great detail, because I want to got another 45 minutes to talk to you about, the UNDOC, the United Nations Department on Organized Crime, came out and literally said, years after those of us in the field say, hey, what's going on here, is that the reason that we did not go into a worldwide recession, right? North America down the toilet, Asia was a problem, Africa's always got issues, and Europe was worse than North America was. Who survived? Who came to the forefront? South America. Who really became dominant was Brazil. Right? Brazil, literally, the banks of Brazil, the economic system of Brazil, which again right now has some political problems, saved the world from economic collapse. Not really. What Brazil was good at was laundering drug money. And so literally there's no supply of cash left in the world economy, but there was all these throughout Central and South America, enclaves of just euros and US dollars just sitting there in caves and banks and underground vaults. And they slowly were filtered through Brazil. So if you remember Brazil being literally a third world nation to becoming a very dominant player economically, well, a lot of that was through money laundering. And now again, Brazil sort of spiraled down away for a variety of reasons. So enforcement's lovely. We spend billions of dollars a year on going into, despite our President Trump, and going into Central South America and doing eliminating coca fields. My son is currently in university still. Talking to him, because he has to talk to his father about something, is that the cost of cocaine in universities today is exactly the same as it was when I was in university. What else do you know in 2026 that's the same price that was in 1978? Not a whole lot. So enforcement, lovely, wonderful. It had no impact. We've got more cocaine available now. Fentanyl's dried up a little bit too, but we've seen other drugs occur. So enforcement's great. It's lovely, has its place. Harm reduction, quite controversial. Do we help people cut down? The answer is yes, we do. That's another lecture. And then treatment. The real answer, of course, despite my bravado, is that all four of these in integration. The difficulty currently is that most of the money goes here in enforcement, very little goes here in prevention, and treatment is thankfully, as Canada and the United States remain two of the jurisdictions with the greatest amount of money that goes into treatment compared to the rest of the world. So we do have treatment resources. Treatment resources in the addiction field are the Wild West. I will talk about that before I leave you this morning. They are still unpredictable. I was talking to a graduate student from University of Toronto yesterday who had worked 6 years in the field and now is going back to do a social work degree after working 6 years in the field. Right? So when you're using resources, when you are recommending as part of your outcomes, if you're talking to other members of the system about addiction treatment, there are some outstanding empirically supported resources in all our communities in Ontario, and there are other ones that are outright dangerous. Part 3, the addiction continuum. This hopefully finally might be of some value to you in your practice, right? So every single one of your clients, of your service users, of your families are somewhere on the continuum, as are you and all your family members. So, as I indicated, you cannot exist in Canadian society this year without coming into some contact with drugs. Alcohol, tobacco, caffeine. I mean, Tim Hortons is the national establishment of this country. So, number one, and this is why prohibition has had such an important element. Remember, drugs have a biological, psychological, social impact, but if you don't consume the drug, then there's no impact. Not like food and sex. You have to actually consume the drug. It's not essential for your lifetime. So we've been big on prohibition. which has yet to work. I've got something 112 documented cases of prohibition not working historically. Contact with the drug. So if you don't come into contact with the drug, you'll never have an addiction. This part is important for you though, and this part again is empirically supported. The longer we can delay first contact with a drug, the less likely it is that the person will develop an addiction. Now, we talked about crisis and social factors. We talked about Vietnam, right? So there'll be all sorts of trauma instances, death of a parent, car accident, childhood cancer, all sorts of things that will be an impetus that you cannot control for that will lead to it. Aging is another impetus. There's a whole thing called secondary alcohol development. They call it alcoholism. I don't like the term, which occurs at my stage of life and later, right? So people in their 60s, 70s, 80s have lost friends, have lost family, have lost children, have lost their partner, right? And so, again, because alcohol is so acceptable in our society, they return to it. The other cool thing about us boomers now is we're, of course, the reason for cannabis increase occurring. Not just young people, but as boomers who now get our weed legally. So number one, contact with the drug. To have contact with the drug, you will not develop an addiction. Very simple. We delay young people having access to drugs. We delay the risk of addiction developing later in lifetime. I would legalize every single drug at the age of 25 once that brain's developed. But contact with the drug means family contact with the drug. And again, important in terms of your work is where do we learn to drink and drug? Our first unit, of course, is our family of origin. We look at what our parents do. And again, I've been doing this a long time. So I don't know, my kids are something like 8 and 5. I'm sitting at the dining room table. I'm having a beer. I'm watching my 8-year-old just watch me have a beer. After I've been telling him since he was about 2 years old that alcohol is bad for him, I go, wow, look at the hypocrite in the household. And so alcohol went away. For better or worse, we did not drink or drug in front of our kids. We simply did not. Also cut down our use because it was for our children. So first contact with drugs doesn't mean just ingestion. It means where do you see it and how is it normalized in your media and in your family? My first drink when I was 5 years old and my uncle had died and there was at a wake and someone had put rum in the Coke and put the Coke down in front of me. And of course, a kid drinks Coke, didn't know there was rum in there as well too. That was the tradition, right? At the wake, right? You celebrated and you mourned with alcohol. All right. So for most of us, our contact with drug comes in early adolescence, mid-adolescence, sadly sometimes prepubescent. So sometimes typically early teen years, sometimes a bit earlier, contact with the drug. And again, our school system encourages us to be curious, encourages us to experiment, right? That's the whole notion. With two major exceptions. You know what, sex and drugs, the things people are most curious about is what they tell us not to experiment with. The reality is, and I don't know if it's your reality, for the vast majority of individuals, if they consume substances the way they did during their early 20s, typically their post-secondary life, right? So that 18 to 24, 25, if we consume drugs and alcohol on the pace we do at that period of time, the addiction rate in this country would be 5 times what it is. Is that experimental point in time, you try different things, you do different things, and then most of us taper off. I've written a paper actually a few years back with a colleague of mine about the Jewish community and about Holocaust issues and about how drug use is rampant among Jews in Canada who are expected to succeed and do well and accomplish. And then when they graduate university, suddenly that life responsibility, that historic cultural responsibility takes over and drug use just falls off the table. Facet. Not that there are people are addiction issues in the Jewish community, of course there are, but they're just the difference between that late adolescence, early adulthood and adulthood is a dramatic decrease. And still addiction issues rise. So we play around when we're teens, we try different things. The difficulty now, the current crop of teenagers, there are more options than when I was a teenager. Costs are down, accessibility is up for a variety of drugs. Thankfully, most people move into this phase of integrated use, casual or occasional. Integrated use is very simple. It's when you choose when you drink or drug. You choose, right? Again, drink is an interesting concept, right? When I say drink, you don't think about orange juice or water or V8, right? You boom, right? Think about an alcoholic beverage. I mean, that's how integrated the notion of drink is in our culture. Anyway, integrated use, the casual, occasional, you decide when you drink, including when you decide you're going to drink too much, right? And this whole promotion advertising now about this, hey, you're going to go to a friend's house, call a cab. There's even a PSA, a public service announcement now about learning to cook with cannabis. And the first thing the person does in PSA is, everyone put your keys here because we're cooking cannabis and trying our products. So you choose when you are intoxicated, and that's still integrated use because you are in control of your substance use, you're in control of your behavior. Your biology may catch up with you the next morning if you're a dry mouth or you got some bed spins or something, but it's still under control. This is the part that becomes a little more tricky. Excessive use. And again, I will assume all of you have friends, perhaps family members, who you've seen this in. When I was in high school, we hung out with a bunch of guys. We played some sports together. We went different ways. We went to bars together. We did other things together. And then we sort of grew out of it for the most part, except for one of us, right? And so, and the guy's name was Greg. And so Greg was, but Greg was always the guy that had the one extra beer in the bar that everyone, hey, let's go home, let's stay for one more. And sort of, we all, got jobs, finished our degrees, got partners. He got a partner too. But he never, and this is such a cliche judgment statement, he never reached his full potential, right? Is that the alcohol, the going out, the partying was always just a little bit more important to him than the rest of us, right? And the rest of my friends I'm still friends with, they've all done very well to define it by having a career and having a job and having money and having a house. If that's how you define doing well in our society, which often is. And so this excessive state is someone that's just using more. They still have a life. He had a job, he got married, had a couple of kids, right? But he never quite, he'll spin his wheels. He'll spin his wheels. So we'd say, hey, enough. And after a while, we just had enough of him. And he wasn't part of our peer group anymore. I haven't seen him now in decades. I have no idea what the outcome has been of his life. But he was using, not at a point in time where it dominated his life, where the drug was the cop, central organizing principle, when the drug was the cop of his life. But it was a dominant theme that distracted from other elements, right? So maybe he got a better job, again, judgmental. Could have been a better parent, who can't be, right? Could have been a better partner's relationship. I think so, but then I judge everybody. And so there's excessive use. And again, a couple of things for us treatment professionals can occur here is that we can catch people here and say, hey, you can take control of your drug use, right? Through treatment, through harm reduction, we can push you back. People can just stop. Okay, I'm done with this. It's too much money. I'm on my second marriage now. I don't see my kids from my first marriage. I'm just going to stop now. Or, as I believe when we left him, my friend Greg was just living in this notion of just a little bit too much. The next step is the easier one, right? This is the notion of addiction. This is when the drug is central. This is when you do start losing family and friends and relationships and jobs and having issues with the criminal justice system, right? It is very problematic. It is through the course of a lifetime, depending what statistic you look at, anywhere between 12 to 15% of the Canadian population will develop an addiction, not counting tobacco or caffeine. We're talking about ones that are deemed as more problematic. Tobacco is the number one cause of premature death of any drug in society, and caffeine is, what are you going to do? Again, a variety of states that your client can be in. We spend a lot of money, and it saves society a lot of money to help people stop. And this happens. You can stop. I have literally dozens of friends, hundreds of students in my years teaching that have had an addiction issue and have stopped. Boom. Go online, go to an AA meeting, an NA meeting, CA meeting. You can go to a Al-Anon, no, not going Al-Anon. You can go to a refuge recovery. There are literally mutual aid groups across demonstrating that millions of people can stop. It works. Treatment works. We're good as counselors to stop people. It can progress. The easiest way to see progression of drug use, even good drug use, is one of your favorite rock stars. Average life expectancy of a male is around 80, 85 now in Canada. And when you see your rock stars dropping at 68, 70, 72, even the good drugs will take them, right? We have the extreme cases, John Belushi's, those examples, Elvis, those examples of extreme drug use that take people much too young. Doesn't happen to stars and rock stars and media stars. It happens to all human beings. They're just the easiest example to see. So a progression of addiction is premature death, period, end of story. Depends on how long you want to live, right? When I was 17, 70 was forever. 70 is around the corner for me, so I want to I keep progressing. No, I want to stop. So progression is premature death. Plain simple. Return is controversial, and that's for another class I'm not going to talk about. There's a whole literature that says you can return to integrated use. If you want to get in a fight with people in the addiction community, just use this. I don't want to get a fight with you, so I'm going to ignore it, but it is part of the continuum. This is, again, an interesting aspect. And it's interesting for yourselves in terms of language, attitude, and views. We in North America support, both in terms of policy and empiricism, a stable state of addiction. We would support more of it if we had better drugs. But right now, we don't have enough drugs. So if you have a client who is on methadone or Suboxone, they are in a stable state of addiction. You take that drug away from them, they're going to go into physical withdrawal. They will go into psychological distress. Again, social circumstances may be more stable because they've got a great supply of drug, but if they miss their drug for a day, they will become physically ill. They are still addicted. But, I'll tell you a story because I've got 25 minutes. In the old days at King's University College, we used to have international trips. One of our trips for the longest time was Mexico until I kiboshed that saying, hey, do you know you're sending our students into an area where two different cartels are in dispute? Don't send them there. But before I ruined everyone's life, as I tend to do, one of the faculty came to me. I don't speak Spanish, so I never went on this vacation. And so they came to me and said, hey, one of our students, they do medical form. They're on methadone. And I go, yeah, what are their grades? They're all A minus and A. Yeah. What's their attendance like? No issue. So why you talk to me? Well, they're on methadone. So do we stop people who are on insulin from going? I didn't talk to the faculty member much. The student went. Student then went out to UC, University of Calgary, did their MSW. They've now been out there about 15 years, and they are a clinical director. Their gastrointestinal system is not going to be great. Their sex drive is going to be impacted, but their clarity, ability to practice, the ability to be a good practitioner, and I haven't talked to them recently, but again, they moved to a position of leadership after 15 years, which is about the right hierarchy in terms of moving up into an organization. And so nothing wrong with being in a stable state. And so you can be addicted to a drug as long as you have it. So again, judgment, context, what does these words mean? We don't have similar substances for depressants or for stimulants or for hallucinogens, but we do have it for opioids. And so again, can you be addicted in stable state? Absolutely. Can you be a responsible parent to be addicted to methadone or Suboxone? Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know how much you need to know about this. I do a whole pharmacology gig where I literally have a drug bag and I drop the drugs down, put them in little families. If your agency wants me to come and do that, I'm happy to do that because I charge lots of money. But these are how you group drugs to understand the impact on the biological, on the brain, right? Depressants, opioids, stimulants, hallucinogens. I should have cannabis here, but it's always controversial. And psychotherapeutic agents, right? So psychotherapeutic agents, the antipsychotics, the antidepressants, the lithium, their job is the opposite of all the other families. So this is the effects of central nervous systems. So depressants, alcohol, benzodiazepines, barbiturates, Z drugs, all the opioids, right? All the opioids, everything from codeine all the way up to fentanyl, right? And everything between oxycodone, oxycontin, all of those all depressants. Stimulants are your cocaine, your amphetamines, your methamphetamine, your ADHD drugs, and to a very small, lesser extent, tobacco and caffeine. Right? You'll notice hallucinogens are on this chart, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. So here you go. Here's neutral. This is homeostasis, right? That's your technical biological term, homeostasis. This is your balance point. This is where you've woken up this morning and you've had hopefully 7-ish hours of sleep, 7-ish. And if you haven't had 7 hours of sleep, I'll talk to you about good and bad things this afternoon. If you want to come, if not, don't come, go to the seminar. You've had enough to eat, your body is pretty good. The lie that Disney has told us, the lie that Hollywood has told us, and I like Hollywood better than I like Disney, is that we should be happy. If we were to be happy, we would have been extinct before we got out of Africa. We'd be dead as a species. Our natural resting state, and this is critical for psychoactive drugs, our natural resting state is a state of anxiety. You wake up every morning and you're anxious. That's what makes us alive. It what makes us the fight-flight response. It's what gets you through university. It's what gets you through the day when it's a million degrees below zero and you still got to get to work because as a family you got to help. Right? It's this notion of constantly being on edge. I coached hockey for several years and still hitting with little kids. And the first thing you taught a little kid was when in the corner, put your head in a swivel. Look to the right, look to the left before you go down and get the puck so no one comes behind you and breaks your back, right? We taught them to head in a swivel. Well, humans' heads are always on a swivel. We're always looking right and left. And that is exhausting. It's exhausting always to be on edge. It's exhausting always to be aware, always to be in a state of preparation to fight or fly, which is why relaxation seminars and spas and breathing exercises are so popular, because everyone is always on edge. So if you come to acknowledge that and live with that, then you can deal with it. But again, most people don't have that insight. Why am I always just not quite right? Well, not quite right is right. Then, of course, there's neurotransmitters, but that's, again, another seminar. So what do? We take drugs. Because what do drugs do? Both stimulants and depressants move us away from neutral, move us away from anxiety to euphoria, right? The colloquial term is being high, but it is just not being anxious for an hour or 8 hours or 9 hours. It's just that respite that Huxley talks about, of moving away, of euphoria. And so drugs do one of two things. So the depressants, and again, if you remember your university days, your college days, go to any bar on campus, or just off campus if you're at Western on Richmond Row, and you'll see this play itself out during orientation week, right? You'll see people who are have a couple of beverages, euphoric, move to relaxation, sedation, drowsiness, stupor, consciousness, coma, and ultimately potentially death. In my profession, it's very easy to be a death educator. Oh, you take drugs, you're going to die. The vast majority of people never die from drug use, but there is a risk which distinguishes an addiction from the gaming, gambling, food dependencies, those sorts of things, right? And the same sort of thing with your stimulants, your cocaine, your amphetamines, excitement, agitation, irritability, spasms, convulsions, coma, death. So both of them, but this is the key element, right? This is where most of your families come into contact with you, is that they're taking substances to move them away from this constant state of anxiety, of social disruption in their household and their lives, to move them to a place of relaxation, sedation, or just excitement and movement and always going. So they're taking themselves away. These are the families of drugs, of depressants. They all act the same way. And I'll give you a sales pitch if you want one later on about how you can know more about these drugs. But it's key to know substances. If you don't know what family a drug belongs to, and you really should, because it impacts the way behavior, slowing up or speeding down, there are different ways. But this is one of the key takeaways I want you to have from my hour and a quarter this morning. This is the difference between men and women, biologically at birth, male and female on drugs. Those of you who had children and your children have been ill, my children were ill all the time, right? You would take them as a baby and you would take them to the physician, and the physician would weigh them. They go, oh, the baby's 20 pounds, give them 4 drops. Oh, he's 3 years old now, he's 40 pounds, give him half a tablet. Oh, wow, he's 18 and he weighs 200 pounds, give him 2. And so when they're children growing up, there is a dose-specific amount provided based upon weight. And then we become 18 years old. And if it's over the counter or often prescription, and again, some doctors are far better than other doctors, some physicians are far better. My partner, who is female and is 120 pounds, and I'm male and I'm 200 pounds, we're given the same dose. And I'm going to tell you why this causes problems, but why women tend to be over-medicated and larger men tend to be under-medicated. And I'll tell you a quick story. I used to be a ball player when I was first married, and we played on a ball team. We played for money, and we were pretty good. And one weekend, we were supposed to play in Kingston, and instead, my cousin's getting married in Sarnia, and my partner says, hey, we're going to Sarnia. I go, you're going to Sarnia. I'm going to play ball. And again, she goes, we're going to Sarnia. So we went to Sarnia. I am not very happy with being Sarnia because as a social worker, I've assessed this relationship. I don't mind giving them a present. It's fine. You know, it's family. I'm not giving present. But I've assessed this marriage is good for 3 years, at which point in time I get one of those comments that you get from someone that you love that goes, be quiet. And she was absolutely correct. The marriage lasted 18 months. So I was wrong. I overestimated the length of the marriage. So I'm off to Sarnia. I'm on the phone because there was no cell phones. I'm on the phone calling the one guy going, hey, how we doing? We're winning. And the guy who's playing third base instead of you, his average is about 100 points above you. My career with that team was just about over that. They didn't need me. I was really sad. So now I'm in Sarnia. I'm in a wedding. No offense, people in Sarnia, lovely town. I'm from Hamilton. You can see the area breathe. I'm in Sarnia. I'm at a wedding, and the wedding ceremony is at noon, and the reception's at like 7 with the bar at 6. I'm not in a good mood. I don't want you to drink as much as I do because I don't drink that much anytime. But between 6 and 7 p.m., I had 6 alcoholic beverages. I was not happy about being there, and I quite consciously decided to be intoxicated and take these people's money to equivalent for the gift I was giving them. So I don't want you to be who I am, but I want you to see what would happen if you try to keep even with me. So in 1 hour, I was about 180 pounds then, a bit heavier now. And by the way, this is about lean weight, not total weight. This is lean body mass. And this is biology. You cannot escape your biology. So I was a 180-pound male, and I had 6 drinks. My blood alcohol was 0.130. Remember, 0.08 is legally intoxicated in the province of Ontario. 0.05 is when they start taking your license away. That's lovely. Alcohol policy and biology are totally disconnected in Canada. A study was done in Australia among male bus drivers. Male, again, because of physiology, bus drivers because they were skilled drivers. They were given various amounts of alcoholic beverage. They found consistently, and this aligns with biology, that it's at 0.02 that your driving is impacted. 0.05, 0.08 are legal limits in this country. 0.02 is the biological point in time where an individual not tolerant to alcohol begins losing their capacity to drive safely. I'm at 0.13. The lovely, lovely, lovely part of this is that we can stick all sorts of alcohol in our bodies really quickly, but it is very slowly to be removed. So again, without the biology that you need to know, it's the rate of elimination of alcohol with a healthy liver, taking no other drugs and no food in your system is 0.015. So basically what I'm telling you is if I stopped drinking at 7 p.m. and didn't have another drink all night, and we know biologically that once you start drinking, your conscious ability, your central nervous system, stops working rationally, if it ever does. And you'll just drink more. But let's pretend for some reason that at 7 p.m. I stopped drinking. So my blood alcohol is 0.13. I got a calculator here because I can't do this in my head anymore. And the rate of elimination is 0.15, which means it would take just over 9 hours for me to be sober just about 8 hours for me to be safe to drive. Not legally impaired, but safe to drive. So if I stop at 7, right, what's 8 hours? That's like 3 o'clock in the morning. If you are my partner, and for some reason you think it's fine to stay even with me, her blood alcohol would have been 0.23. Mine's 0.13. Hers is 0.23. 0.23 divided by 0.015, that's 15 hours to become totally alcohol-free. And so alcohol works differently than other biological systems. Others have something called half-life, which again, you don't need to know. But what you need to know is if a man and a woman, even if the same, okay, let's pretend Debbie was the same to me at 180, right? At 180, it would have been 0.15. So she'd just been slightly more impaired than me, just need another hour. And so it's not dramatic in terms of men and women of equal height and weight and tolerance. But biologically, and again, I can't speak to relationships, is that the person you're in a relationship with, there tends to be a difference between males and females. And even in same-sex couples, there tends to be one person that's heavier than the other person. So you cannot drink at the same rates because it's sex-based and weight-based, lean weight-based. This is for alcohol. The same pattern applies to all drugs. So if you've got, a teen who's on an antipsychotic drug, an antidepressant drug, or smoking cannabis, or having a couple of drinks every night because the family's dysfunctional, as opposed to their brother or stepbrother, right? You can see a difference in the impact of that drug on them. And so just to keep in mind in terms of risk, the lighter you are, the greater the risk. Female more risk than male, regardless of the drug you take. And this is your scientific proof that gives it to you. Again, you're welcome to use it as you need. The other fact I'm supposed to leave time for questions, so I'm going to show you one more chart and then just do the treatment system very quickly and then roll into questions, and you have my email. This is the other issue, just in terms of, for your information, opioids, and here a bunch of them are listed here. You'll notice that most opioids, despite the media, most opioids in this country are legal. Everything on that list is legal except heroin. Fentanyl is very, very legal. They've used it in a illegal manner because of the whole Oxycontin situation. But these are all legal substances. The scale is based on morphine. Morphine is given a potency of 1, and then all other drugs are compared to it. So you'll see codeine is 1/10 as powerful as morphine, and you'll see that methadone and heroin are 10 times more potent than morphine. Fentanyl, again, 100 times more potent, which is why it's problematic. Again, this information is there. The charts are there. You can download them, or you can ask me for email. I'm happy to send you any information as well, too. Just in terms of background information, in terms of when you hear treatment plans coming in or you're recommending treatment professionals going out, is that Oxycontin, oxycodone is still available, Dilaudid. I have no issues with someone who's on fentanyl and someone's on heroin being given methadone to keep them legally addicted so they can function in society. I've told you that story. My issue has always been when people are on oxycodone, Oxycontin, and we stick them on methadone or Suboxone. We're actually creating a greater level of physical dependency. I have too many slides. Oh, just quickly, because I can't help myself. Hallucinogens, psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, and cannabis, which really isn't hallucinogens, it's its own family, but we got to stick it somewhere, so I stick it in here. No, I haven't got the list. So LSD, psilocybin, they are pure hallucinogens. MDMA is a stimulant hallucinogen. They are non-addicting drugs. They do not produce physical dependency. This goes back to me being a heretic, right? Why gaming and gambling and food aren't addictive. They're problematic if you mix excessively. But LSD, psilocybin, MDMA, you're going to come across more and more in your practice psychedelically assisted therapy. I'm not sure how quickly you're going to move to legalize it. We do it now with ketamine, which falls into this category. And it's a legal drug. It can be prescribed by doctors. LSD, psilocybin are illegal drugs. You need special permission to use them for treatment. The literature indicates, and it's varied, but the literature indicates for PTSD, for treatment-resistant depression, these substances work. And they are superior because they do not produce physical dependency. Ketamine is used broadly because it's a legal drug. It's actually on the World Health Organization's list of most important drugs because it works so quickly. But as we know from Matthew Perry, too much ketamine can kill you. Regular use of ketamine as a recreational drug will destroy your bladder. So you got to watch teens using ketamine recreationally. They're going to have all sorts of incontinence issues as they age. But in terms of psychedelically assisted therapy, it is legitimate. It is worthwhile. It needs to be properly used because it should not be broadly used that anything should be, but certainly don't shy away from that as a treatment alternative for people with substantive mental health issues. Cannabis, I'm going to stick this on a different slide next time. Cannabis, again, is legal in this country. Increase of use among obviously young people and boomers like me. New piece last night on the CBC about causing more psychosis. The literature is still mixed. We have more psychosis because when we're better at, among young people under 25, because we're better assessing it, we're looking at it, and certainly cannabis is contributing to it. But my read of the literature is that cannabis will produce an addiction. It will not produce psychosis unless there's a predisposition towards it. Now, we don't know what the predisposition is in anybody because we can't do brain scan of you. So cannabis under the age of 25, yes, is an at-risk drug, but then so is alcohol. 5 minutes treatment, and then quickly, I was supposed to say for questions, I will stay during the break for questions if you have any. Otherwise, you can actually have a break from my voice. This is the idealized treatment system for addictions in the province of Ontario. Very few of you, unless you live in Toronto, the GTA, have the entire continuum of it. They just don't exist. We have not funded it. I'm going to just go for addiction resources. You have a variety of options. You have day treatment. You have harm reduction options. Concurrent disorder, which is mental health and addiction. Short-term residential programs up to 28 days. And then longer-term recovery homes and alternative living environments and managed alcohol programs. All I want to tell you is that check credentials. There is no credential required in Ontario or in Canada to call yourself an addiction counselor. To be a social worker, yes. To be a psychologist, yes. To be a physician or psychiatrist, yes. But to be an addiction counselor, congratulations. I just anoint you all addiction counselors. So the treatment system works, but make sure when you're referring or using that they are individuals that do belong to a registered college because they don't have to hire them to work in the system. I want to thank you for giving me an extra 10 minutes. I used it all up and still didn't cover all my slides. I'm happy. I'm not sure if you've got time for questions or anything. I'm happy to stay for questions or run into break for people who don't want to go. So I will stop sharing my screen as soon as I find the slide for it. And there we go. I'm back.
So we might have time.